on stage Joseph Dominguez, President and CEO, Constellation Energy. Rami ElDebs, Global Data and AI Strategy Lead, Accenture. Marcius Extavour, Senior Partner, Ode. Richard Newell, CSO and CTO, Sustainability Solutions, C3AI. Darryl Willis, Corporate Vice President, Energy and Resources Industry, Microsoft. Moderator, Patricia Falco Beccalli, Co-founder, Falco Global Partners.
Hello. I have to say, first of all, addressing my panel, we've got a job to do now, talking about something novel, talking about AI, because I think the previous panel did a good job on that one. So first of all, thank you very much for showing up to this panel. And AI is moving us all, whether in the direction of liking it or disliking it, but I think the time to embrace it happened a long time ago for many, many people. And on this panel in particular, we're actually going to talk about how to scale AI and digital innovation in order to help the energy industry, the transition of energy, and the industrial sector as such. And my question really is, let's put this all in a bit of a frame. If we talk about scaling, where are we right now? I don't know if you know. You will know. So I thought, let's start with a question. Where are we right now before we talk about scaling? Scaling is good, but not necessarily just because it takes us bigger, but it should get us closer to our targets of net zero by 2050. And this is why we are here. Darryl, let me ask you, first of all, what does AI right now and digital innovation do for Microsoft, and what does Microsoft do for it right now?
I would say, Patricia, a couple of things. The first one is that we are living in a time where AI, in particular generative AI, will literally allow for us to reimagine everything we do. And so Microsoft is in the process of internally and working with many of our customers and partners on this stage, thinking about how do we absolutely reimagine every single work process. As a result of that, what I believe is that there's an incredible amount of acceleration that is starting to occur, but it's still early days. And cycle times will be improving not 2 or 3%, but 20, 30, 40%. I'll talk later about some examples where we've seen 70% improvements in cycle time as a result of work that we're doing with generative AI. And the third thing I would say, and final thing, is that from our standpoint, partnership is absolutely essential. Any company, any organization that's trying to be or get on this journey, it's best not to do it alone. You've got to figure out who to partner with, big companies, small companies, medium-sized companies. Usual partnerships and unusual partnerships, I think, are required for success.
And Darryl will get into partnerships a little later on, even deeper. And Richard, you know, C3 is one of the biggest partners of Baker Hughes, together also with Microsoft, especially when it comes to BHC3, those platforms there. So where is the status quo for you now? And what is your main view where you are with Baker Hughes and all the other partnerships you have as well?
Well, I'd say the big picture status quo, current situation, is that the societal expectations for what the energy sector, what the corporate sector will deliver in terms of affordable, reliable, clean energy, those expectations have never been higher. The ambition of companies, including all the companies on this stage, to deliver on that, to deliver affordable, reliable, and clean energy have never been higher. The availability of information to help inform that, data, compute power, has never been higher. But our ability to take action, to make a difference, still needs work. And we're still, as Darryl was saying, still in the early days. And AI can really help with that through machine learning, through natural language processing, through computer vision and image recognition. We can take action to help deliver on these promises. And so, you know, but it does really take partnerships, because you need the technological expertise in particular sectors. You need the cloud services and the infrastructure that a company like Microsoft provides. You need, of course, the AI applications. So, we're sitting at the, still the early days, but we see amazing action and promise when we actually deploy these technologies with companies like we have here at this meeting.
So implementation, integration is something that is fundamental. It is happening, but it's still nascent. Let me quickly go to Marcus here. Richard just mentioned the word data. And ODE is, of course, like most of, if not all of the AI system is very much based on the data and qualitative data. So where are we right now in your particular sector?
Thank you. Well, at ODE, we're a group of designers and data engineers that have a hypothesis that we can actually use machine learning and design to do things from communication of what AI is and why you should possibly care, let's say to investors or stakeholders, but also to really work on more hardcore technologies that can actually make some of the differences that we've been speaking at today. We think of things, I think, very much through the lens of the energy trilemma. Is AI and these digital techniques helpful for security? We think yes. For sustainability and emissions reductions, which are my main focus, yes. And also for cost and affordability. On data in particular, one of the things that we are playing with in particular is we have a hypothesis that image data, and specifically satellite data, which is also called geospatial data, can be a new frontier for AI development. That's something we're working on now. A simple way to understand this is that if you have interacted with an AI system on your phone, on your laptop, it's probably something like Perplexity or ChatGPT or Bard or many of the other systems, Claude. I don't want to leave anybody out. They're text-based. Incredible gains have been made just with language processing and LLMs. But conceive of the fraction or the entirety of human knowledge and data in the world, picture that in your mind, and then picture what fraction of that is text. It's not 100%. The point is wisdom, images, sounds, these are other forms of data that are a little bit behind where LLMs are, but I think in the next 2 or 3 years, you're going to see more and more AI models that don't train on text, that train on other forms of data. I don't know yet if that's useful. We have a hypothesis that it's useful, but it's going to be interesting.
I love that, useful or not useful. And also the difference, and we might touch on it, between AI and generative AI, and how generative AI actually might play a role also in the energy transition energy. But I think, Rami, what the question is here, what is the status quo of creating value? We talked at length about great to have data, great to have AI, great to have the metrics, but what is the actual value creation right now, and what should it be going forward?
That's a fantastic question. I think, look, the value potential going forward has been spoken about a lot. There are all the big numbers. I think on the last panel we said there are too many numbers out there right now, right? The trillions of dollars of GDP. I don't think basically anybody doubts the value potential in the future. The status quo today, however, is a bit different, right? So if we look 12 months back, we run basically an annual survey to understand where companies are on their journeys. And we had about 1% of companies last year, 12 months ago, that had done anything significant, especially on the generative side of things, right? AI as a big discipline has been there for a while. But as we think more and more about like the real change of work that's happening right now basically our data is showing that among the top 2,000 companies in the world, 34% of them have actually scaled fully at least one generative AI bet in their companies. And what they're seeing basically with that is about 4x to 10x ROI on the dollar today. Now, these bets might be simple in the back office, might be in core operations, the spectrum is large, but I think there's no doubt that it's starting to show value. But it's very important also to understand that the technology is still in its early days, right? Yeah. I mean, it's the hype around AI being something that would just drop from heaven and fix everything is obviously not true, but I think also the extreme skepticism is also not true, right? So it is delivering value today, and there are avenues to do that, and we'll talk, I think, a bit more about the fact that it's a bit less about where do I apply AI, because it can apply in many, many different places, but it's also about how do I go about that.
Absolutely, and that is the operational part of everything that is theoretical, and I think that for the audience is very important to say, okay, what is out there is great, but how do I actually use it for my company in order to have some return on the investment, which we might also touch on, which AI, the transformation and integration of AI costs every company. Joe, I'm very happy you joined last minute our panel, so thanks very much for doing that. And the reason why I think you add a lot of value to this, because you are like the biggest, as I understand, biggest green energy provider in Maryland. And I wonder, how do you really use AI in your everyday processes to maintain the status quo, but also kind of watch out that the US continues to be at the forefront of technological development and innovation?
Well, thank you. I'm also pleased to be here. We actually just announced an acquisition where we're buying the largest natural gas-fired generation fleet in America. So we'll be the largest clean fleet, largest natural gas fleet, largest geothermal fleet, and largest customer platform. And to us, we see applications really across the board. I was smiling a little bit when you asked the question, what's the status quo? I think the status quo is actually excitement, fear, and loathing. Excitement about all the things that we've been talking about the last couple of days, the growth in the power sector, excitement for our investors. But there's also a lot of fear out there. There's fear that we're going to go backwards on sustainability, to the point that you made earlier about having the largest green fleet. What does it mean in terms of the composition of our energy that is really going to the data economy and to power these large data centers or training models or that sort of thing? And then the loathing piece of it is a little bit more around what's it mean for society, jobs, and all of the other things that we're talking about. And we tend to talk about AI in terms of these really long-term longitudinal benefits, curing cancer or material science, these bigger things. And I find that people in the kind of political space like the idea of those things, but the tangible benefit needs to be presented earlier for them to buy in. And so the way we're using it right now, and I think you have to, I think, Darryl, you said it right, and Rich too, just partnerships become so important. Partnerships we have with Microsoft and others have been game changers. Figuring out where you develop the work as opposed to where you're going to be the beneficiary as Microsoft develops Azure and other things that you could readily incorporate into your financial systems. To me, the biggest benefits are going to be in the operations of the grid. As you well know, as everybody knows who's ever been a grid customer, we don't use the same amount of energy all seasons of the year or all times of the day. And so that means at most times, 90+% of the time, we have more than abundant energy. And what we're really talking is about peak demand issues. As we incorporate intermittent forms of energy, that peak demand problem becomes very different, more complicated. So sensors and effectively making sure that we're able to use not more power plants, but the existing power plants we have, the existing transmission system, more effectively. I think that's going to present a $1 trillion opportunity for the US economy that's going to be beneficial from a sustainability perspective, a cost perspective, and ultimately from a security perspective. And then likewise, going from that kind of macro benefit all the way down to the operations of power plants. We're doing something with Microsoft that will be the first of its kind. We're going to completely move to AI-generated data and forensics at a nuclear facility. If you think about a nuclear plant, it's probably the most instrumented and most controlled industrial piece of equipment in the world today.
Has to be.
It's a great application there. So I think the world is kind of our oyster here, but people are anxious to see the benefits because they're afraid of the implications.
Who wants to comment on that one?
I would like to comment on that, if you don't mind. I mean, I would just say, just building on what Joseph said, one of the things we talk a lot about in Microsoft is the fact that I talk about a lot in Microsoft. Energy gets a bad rap. Energy is not bad. Emissions are bad, not energy. Energy actually does so much to, and everyone in this audience knows, to transform the quality of lives of people. And so we spend a lot of time talking about more energy, less emissions, and fast in Microsoft. And the fast will be instigated by generative AI. But I think about our relationship with Constellation and specific things we're doing around 24/7 carbon matching. I think about the fact that Constellation, as a partner and a customer, is experimenting with our nuclear licensing co-pilot. It typically can cost up to $100 million to get a license for the nuclear industry, and we've got a co-pilot that we've created to cut that process, the time for the preparation of the documents by 70%. We're doing things with vegetation management and transmission lines, again with Constellation. But the most important thing I would say is you never would have been able to convince me 5 years ago that Microsoft would be involved in the restoration or restarting of what was called 3 Mile Island in Pennsylvania, but I guess it's referred to as the Crane Clean Energy Center now. It would have never happened. But this whole convergence around technology, emissions reduction, energy access is creating these partnerships that will be transformational.
Marcus?
I want to speak about the fear part. I'm remembering I was back in my hometown, Toronto, a couple months ago, and I was chatting with my cousin. She said, "What are you up to?" I said, "I'm trying to use, computers to reduce emissions, blah, 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 AI, blah, blah, blah." And she said, "I thought AI was bad for the environment. What are you talking about?" And I want to just pick up on this fear point. I think the fear is, because what do you see if you're on the outside looking in? You see massive investment announcements, you see product announcements, you see press headlines, and you might see a video about a robot taking a job or something like that. And to the point made earlier, we're not seeing the practical, tangible benefits. Or when we are, they're hard to describe. I mean, a couple of anecdotes that I might share back on that were, we were able to do projects related to identifying illegal mining sites, which for mining folks in the audience know tend to be small and remote. It turns out you can train a computer to spot these in imagery. To what we say structure unstructured data, which is a fancy way of saying getting the computer to type for you or produce reports or put data together. That's something we play with a lot. A lot of the excitement about AI has to do with experimentation, and that's something that I see quite a bit. If you want to dig into it, there are leaderboards where different models and different products are being published all the time, sometimes from universities, sometimes from small groups. They're coming out every 2 weeks, every 3 months. They're moving very quickly. That's opaque to the public. That's opaque, to most of us, including me a lot of the time. So a lot of the excitement is happening in places where people just can't see. And I think the more we can sort of just tell stories, tell anecdotes about what the future could mean for huge step change innovations, but also, as you said, what's actually happening today, aside from run up in electricity demand, potential build out of data centers, is that good, is that bad, can it happen? That's where the debate is, and that's appropriate, but I think we need to add other things to that too to round it out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would like to ask Rami that one. We need to add something to it, and that is kind of like real outcome for the company. So I'm a businesswoman, so if I do an investment, I need a return on my investment, and as fast as possible. And it can't be because I'm cutting numbers of my jobs, it can't be because I'm just decimating actually the core of my business, but because I'm adding something on that will leapfrog me to some investments, outcomes. So Rami, let me ask you, hypothesis is great, but it's scary. It's like, okay, what if? I need to have hard data. I mean, you at Accenture, you've got over 5,000 of big transition projects. You know your customers, you know their fears. Thanks very much for, opening that emotional part of the entire issue. But you wouldn't be in business if you can't have them deliver, or if you can't deliver for them a certain outcome, which is pecunia, which keeps their business going long term.
Right. I mean, just to also join the fear part, right? I mean, as a knowledge industry, we're one of the most disrupted in the world, so we take AI very seriously to ourselves as well. I always say, everybody today has access to a B+ consultant for free, everybody, right? So it's also a big, very serious thing for us that I also have the chance to lead for our advisory business. But I think to your point, look, I think the biggest shift as well that we're seeing with AI now, especially with the generative side of things, AI is starting to become a very general purpose technology. it can apply almost everywhere. It's the first time we have a technology that applies to the CEO all the way down to like the frontline worker, right? And across industries and across the world. And the second thing also is that, again, with the the new generative models, basically everybody, the most sophisticated intelligence agency in the world and a primary kind of school kid in a third world country have access to the same AI, right? And what this basically means is that AI today, it's not really about who has access to the better technology and all of these things. Because it's so general purpose and it can apply almost everywhere, the big shift we're seeing in actually delivering value is a major, I think, paradigm shift in approach. So we're going from, tell me what are all these things that are coming every 2 weeks out there in the market and how do I evaluate all of them and have 3,000 use cases and go and prioritize them, to actually a bit of what Darryl was talking about, what they're doing at Microsoft internally, which we're doing for ourselves and others as well, which is actually start from the work, right? So the technology is at a place where I can actually take end-to-end processes and I can actually ask myself at the level of the work, is this activity still useful in the age of AI, right? Can I do something now that I thought was impossible yesterday that I can only do now? And once you start like reconstructing your work bottom up for your company, this will automatically tell you that the value story leads to this technology. It's a very different paradigm than saying, let me start with what technology is out there and go find value for it. It's basically, AI could apply almost everywhere with different types of AI. Let me actually figure out what makes sense for me to change my work or challenge the orthodoxies of my business model and then basically get to AI. I mean, that's the biggest paradigm shift that we're seeing. And obviously it doesn't stop there. I mean, after all of that is still to define where you apply AI. Again, like the hardest part is actual execution. So how do you actually change the work? How do you go and basically change ways of working? I think we're talking a bit about talent. I think people automatically rotate when you talk about AI talent to the talent to build AI. That's very important, but there are companies that do that for a living, right? The crux of it is the talent to use AI, right? And especially in our sectors and industrial sectors as well, like this industry and others. I mean, now it's getting better, but we don't have the most digital literate workforce in the world, right? Especially on the field. So how do you teach those people to actually know when to use AI, when not to use AI, how to interact with it, extract value from it is a huge part. The partnerships as well that the team has spoken about, but I think a big point that we also didn't dive deep into is also these hard-to-abate sectors that we're trying to target here have actually also underinvested in their digital foundations for a while, right? For many, many years. And the current wave of AI, I think, will require also beyond data, it will also require knowledge, like knowledge that can contextualize this data for this new wave of agents that are coming out or generative AI and things like that. And that will also require a commitment to really change the way we look at that digital core of ours.
Let me pick up on that one. Richard, maybe you want to comment on this one. Data quality. You know, how do you really censor what goes in order to make sure that what comes out is really helpful? And who decides this kind of censorship? Is that a human being? Is that the machine learning what is good data, what is bad data? Is open source better than proprietary data? Let's drill a little bit deeper into the quality of data, which then determines the quality of the outcome.
Yeah. So I'll comment. I also want to come back to a couple of things on value creation and scale, which I think are really important. But on data quality, AI, so one principle that we've learned is you need to meet large enterprises where they are currently in their information technology systems. The idea that you take a multi-year process to create, some wonderful data lake that is perfect, that tends to delay action and delay value creation and delay cost savings. So we tend to meet companies where they are. Companies have many different enterprise systems for financial data, for HR data, for sensor data coming off their equipment. And so by fusing that data and bringing it together, you can then take action on it that you couldn't really take before, and you can take it much more quickly. Now on data quality, AI can actually be very, very helpful with that. Because you can do anomaly detection, data cleaning processes that can really help with that. And then you can, but I would say you start with the data where it currently is. You can use AI to help identify that and go back to the root cause. So the other one of the advantages of this kind of data fusion process is that you can connect all the way directly from ground truth up to the higher levels of the corporation so that you don't have, spreadsheets being emailed and so on. But let me come back to the question of scale and value creation. And what we've found is the most successful way to work with an enterprise on deploying AI is to first start with one high-value use case where you deploy one application on one asset. Let's say it's a generator or a turbine or a compressor or a furnace or a boiler in an industrial setting. You deploy it there 3 to 6 months, identify the value, work out any bugs, do the data integration, and then you can scale in two directions. You scale with the same type of application on the same type of equipment at the same facility and then multiple facilities. And then you can scale in terms of the application. So you move from a reliability-related application where you're doing predictive analytics on a piece of machinery to doing process optimization for yield and quality improvement, energy management, emissions management, generative AI, right? So you can scale in those two directions. And so large enterprises we work with, I'm not going to name anybody, but in this room, 200,000 different AI models running,
Yes.
2 million different models detected, literally hundreds of $millions of savings through the deployment of these applications. But it really starts with one high-value use case to prove the value to the enterprise.
I like that. Darryl? You want to comment on that one?
I was just going to add that, just in addition to what Richard was saying, which I totally agree with, I think another piece of the equation that's incredibly important, and it's also related to, I also build on a comment about fear as well, is that scaling motion is incredibly important, but also executive sponsorship is really, really important. The companies where we see success with orchestration and implementation of AI are companies that realize that they need to scale through their organizations, but also where there's curiosity and interest in this in the C-suite. The companies that are making the progress have presidents and CEOs and CXOs that are asking questions of the organization and insisting that the pace be adequate. What makes me nervous and what causes me a lot of fear as I think about the journey we're on in general is when I listen to a CEO or a president or CXO talk about a 5-year plan for AI or a 3-year plan for AI, because it actually needs to be a 5-month plan, a 3-month plan. If you have a 5-year plan, it's obsolete. A 3-year plan is obsolete. Things are literally changing by the week.
Real time.
There's an urgency here for companies to really embrace this.
No, I think this is a really good point, actually. And let's talk to you about that one, Joe. I mean, you also touched on it. The entire process of integrating anything always needs to go until the grassroots, until the last employee, which is the first one, if they don't play along, for the whole idea not to work. So how do you actually manage the change management? How do you get people on board with so many misconceptions? Let's talk about this misconception that one day you and I, we will be all obsolete because all of a sudden we have that great singularity coming and actually the machines really being smarter and happier without us humans. How do you manage to get skeptics on board?
Yeah, I think the first thing is these aren't binary outcomes. These aren't people had a job and then they don't have a job. And to a certain extent, we talk a lot about this, but we have a lot of history with machine learning and other things that really kind of take us to the doorstep of AI, if you will. And so our employee base has seen us utilize these tools and not end up in a situation where we have fewer people necessarily. Look, anyone who says there's never going to be a job loss because of AI is full of soup, and we know that. But the truth of it is that most of the time what we're trying to do is do more with the people we have and be able to provide even more services to our clients. And that actually opens the door for growth in the business and ultimately growth in the employee pool. So, I think we have been able to make that case successfully because the history of the company has demonstrated that. But the other thing, and I think you touched on this, is where does this journey reside in your organization? Is it an IT function? Or, because I think for a lot of companies it would be. This is the next IT tool, you give it to the IT manager, and God knows what happens then. But if you're really leading it from both the top and the bottom of the organization where you're doing ideation, and the beautiful thing about AI is that, you could really kind of dream your future. You could decide whether the technology is mature enough to achieve whatever particular outcome you are. But you really start with the business team saying, what would you like to do? What are the things that we're spending a lot of time on in our business core design, or a lot of data management for clients? We talked a little bit about this tool we're deploying with the help of Microsoft to give every one of our customers a clear picture of when they're using energy, what part of that is sustainable, where it's being produced, from what technology, how you time match and get the most economic bang for the buck for your energy dollar. So all of those things really originated with the work of our employees who are servicing those customers saying, you know, it would be great if we could do this. And then you import the tool, and then that's where you have to have C-suite attention to that. And I don't mean the let's check in on it every month kind of attention. You really want to do this? Set up a Monday morning meeting.
Yeah.
You're going 2 hours every Monday morning, and you're talking about project by project, where it makes sense, where it doesn't. That's where at least we found we are able to actually move the ball down the field.
Yeah, I love that idea, that basically, as far as I understand it, please correct me if I don't get that from the point of ideation, you get everybody on board and say, hey, listen, what would you do? How can we do this? And then really grow it from the first seat to basically scale it within the company and then see the benefits. We've got not that much time left, so I have a little bit of a page break here. Bear with me, because I think there are fundamental issues that were important to society that happened as of late. One of them, Monday a week ago, DeepSeek hits, even though it's been around for a while. And we cannot have an AI panel to talk a little bit about DeepSeek, okay, and its R1 model. I wonder whether R stands for revolution or revenge. The verdict is still out there. But basically, the entire, I did so much research on how much, our data centers have in energy demand going forward. I wonder whether the McKinseys, the Bains, the whoever's need to recalculate when it comes to energy demand going forward. I would like to hear a comment, gut comment or intellectual comment, I really don't mind, about what does DeepSeek now mean for your companies, for the actual DNA of what AI is right now and can bring in terms of power demand, actual cost, and also, the money it takes to actually train the system. Darryl?
I mean, I would say that, and just kind of quoting our CEO, Satya, last week, because this announcement came out 2 days before our earnings at Microsoft, and he essentially said what I believe is that this is a good thing. I think that the DeepSeek will only make us all better. And if we can get the cost down associated with the energy required for these models, we can get the number of data centers down, that's good for everyone. And so the immersion of this, what has been perceived as a competitive threat, is an opportunity for us all to get better and more efficient. We can do it with less energy, less cement, less steel. It's better for the environment. And ultimately, it'll be better for society. So
it's a good thing. Richard?
Yeah, and I would say it was expected, at least by us. Whenever you have scarce resources, chips are scarce.
So sorry, were you shorting the market before that announcement of DeepSeek? Because about $1 trillion were lost in one trading session. Okay, you can't talk about that. I understand
say that, it's anybody's ever talked to
nobody else did
STP,
expect it.
For our company, we've built our architecture to be what we call LLM agnostic, meaning we'll deploy the large language model that is best for a particular purpose. They don't all do the same things as well as one another. We also know that what happened with DeepSeek could happen at any time, and it's going to continue to happen. This is still, while there's been huge advances, this is going to continue for decades. And so, I would say a recommendation is, build an infrastructure that can survive with all these different parts of the AI ecosystem, that they can be kind of moved around and replaced without a lot of fragility to it. But the other thing I would say, it's expected in the sense that, scarce resources, scarce compute power, scarce chips creates competition, creates innovation, which can be self-reinforcing, and as I agree, is a good thing.
Well, I just wonder, Marcus, because I'm thinking not too long ago, OpenAI actually raised 6.6 billion dollars. If I was one of their investors having DeepSeek hit the market, I'm like going, okay, maybe I didn't make such a good investment. So what's your feeling?
No comment. Just kidding. DeepSeek is a reminder that innovation is disruptive and disruptive is uncomfortable. And people that make long-term predictions at the early stage of a technology innovation are always wrong. One of my favorite quotes is that all models are wrong, some models are useful. DeepSeek shows us there are different ways to do it. There'll be another DeepSeek and another one and another one, whether it's next year or next week or the next day. In our own work, I guess we're a little bit like C3, we try to use as many publicly available LLMs as we can, and we frankly will offer pros and cons for different customers, for different applications. I guess as I think ahead and where this is going, what it means, my hot take, if you can call it that, is that similar to things like optical fiber, I'm a physicist, I have a background in optical networking, and internet technologies, they become commodified. Data may become commodified, models may become commodified, and the value will shift into specific applications that are built on top of those. That doesn't mean there isn't value in models and data now, but it's likely, in my view, and others have opined on this, that may be where we're going, and DeepSeek may be a piece of evidence in favor of that claim.
Rami, did you have some clients calling you saying, hey,
like that,
what's going on?
It was bad, exactly. So I mean, even the last 2 days here, I think every conversation had like DeepSeek in it. Look, I mean, I agree with everything the panel said. Look, back to Richard's point. I mean, if you really look at even the last 18 months of AI, right? GPT-4 level intelligence in 18 months, right? Its cost went down 1,000 times, right? With DeepSeek, GPT-01 level intelligence went down 27 times in 3 months, right? So it's nothing that is like an outlier to the curve, right? I did not expect it and short the market, but it wasn't like a surprise for people in the field, like, oh my God, what's happened, right? There was a bit of a surprise that, okay, yes, it came from China with a shortage of chips, so there was a bit of innovation there on the way they were training the architecture, which is great, and I think it will spur more and more innovation. The other side of the question I think that remains is, what does this mean for basically energy for AI rather than AI for energy, right? So are we really going to see like energy demand plummeting or anything like that? And I really don't think so, right? I mean, I think this is just another barrier removed to increase adoption faster and faster, right? So the cost is going down, the capabilities are going up, and I think this is literally just more opportunity for everybody to adopt AI more. Inference will increase, and I think overall, I don't see us, again, like all the forecasts will most likely be wrong, but I really don't see that we'll see like a big shock in the energy demand.
More to come. I mean, you had a bit of a shock because Constellation was also part of those stocks that had a bit of a reaction, but you bounced back. So.
Yeah, well, let me give you an example. Let me give you a real-life example of what happened. So we became a public company, relatively speaking, about 3 years ago. It was part of a spin from a big electric wires company called Exelon. And at the time we launched our company, our stock price was $47, which represented maybe $17 billion of enterprise value. Relatively speaking, the 23rd largest electric power company in the US. Earlier in the year, last month, it is earlier in the year, our stock price went from $47 to a little bit over $350 a share. Our market valuation climbed to over $100 billion. Our relative positioning in the market went from the 23rd largest to the second largest in the US. So a pretty dramatic swing over the course of 3 years. A lot of that is the renaissance or the perceived renaissance in the nuclear field, the recognition that it's a sustainability tool, but also this demand. On the day DeepSeek was announced, our stock price lost about $90. So if you're following my numbers here, we lost in one day twice the value of the entirety of the company 3 years ago. And today, as I sit here today, we are still 20% up on the market this year. I mean, talk about volatility.
Yeah.
And I look at the management team and I say, I can't believe we've got 11 more months of this, right? But maybe it'll...
Hopefully not.
But the point of it is that so much of what we're seeing, so much of what we're talking about at this conference is very much still in the early stage, not really fundamental value driven in terms of the applications in the business or in terms of whether we really can define the growth with precision. What DeepSeek tells us is there are going to be bumps in the road. And the one thing that I think we have to keep kind of coming back to is, and I think you said this spot on, the more efficient this becomes, the more likely that the cost for consumers to use the product is going to be lower, and the more likely we're going to get broader adoption. And so the energy consumption may not come the way we thought it would initially, but it will come. And the benefits will come to the general public faster and to society faster.
And
so it's a good thing, right? But it is going to be these blips where you're going to say, holy cow, what just happened to this stock I bought or my whole business strategy? And you better get used to it. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
strap in.
Just to quote Martha Stewart, it's a good thing. And I hope that the audience is kind of convinced that AI, digital innovation, is and stays a good thing and that we'll make most of it. And whoever is not in it yet, I think we are at a stage now where things are looking a little bit more interesting, more energy efficient, more cost efficient, et cetera, et cetera. And let me just quote the International Energy Agency when it comes to the synergy between energy and AI. They call it a power couple. Now, what do power couples do? They make the most of what they got, and they try to create what they need in sincerity and in partnership. And with that, I say thank you to the panel, and thank you for your interest.
Thank you.